So good evening, everyone. My name is Drew Irvin. I'm the Deputy Village Clerk. In the absence of Village President Regis Charlot, I will be calling the Monday, March 13th, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. And I'll start with calling the roll. Trustee Ankerman?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Hatch?
Here.
Trustee Markey?
Here.
Trustee Rappin?
Here.
And Trustee Ryder?
Here.
So again, in the absence of village president, it's typical for the village to have the longest serving trustee serve as president pro tem, and we'd be looking for such a motion.
I make a motion for Barb to serve as the president, Trustee Ankerman to serve as the president pro tem this evening.
I'll second.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. It's yours.
Thank you. Okay, looking at the agenda, it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes of the February 27th, 2023 regular Village Board meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Markey. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Trustee Hatch. Were there any corrections or updates to the minutes as presented? Hearing none. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, we have any non-agenda items or visitors. This is an opportunity for the village president and the Board of Trustees. We've allocated 15 minutes during this item for any individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Village Board of Trustees for any matter that is not listed on this evening's agenda. And each person addressing the Village Board of Trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Do we have anyone in the room who would like to address the board? And online, do we have anyone?
We have 3 attendees participating in the village's Zoom meeting. If any of one of them would like to be recognized and speak under this time on the village agenda, please raise your hand and you'll be recognized. No one appears to be raising their hand.
Thank you. We'll move on. Next, the village board will set the order of the meeting. We will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted. Do we have any items that we would like to advance in the order?
Might want to take.
It appears that there's maybe a Park District representative. She's here for the leaf blower.
Item 14.
Okay, item
Move that one
14. Okay. So let's move item 14 ahead.
Second reading.
That brings a smile. Anybody else? All right. Do we need a motion to just
No,
that?
just without
Okay.
objection.
Without objection, we will go ahead and start with agenda item 14. So agenda item 14 is an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff Municipal Code regarding the use of leaf blowers. As previously discussed by the village board, the village of Lake Bluff was a member of the Regional Leaf Blower Working Group, also known as the Working Group. And it was formed in late 2021 to evaluate the need and impact of leaf blower regulations to be considered by the participating municipalities. The working group was tasked with studying the impacts of gas-powered leaf blowers, alternative technologies, and how communities could mitigate the impacts of this equipment. At its January 9th, 2023 meeting, the village board reviewed the working group's final report and referred the matter to the village's Sustainability and Enhancement Committee. The village board tasked the SEC with further examining the final report and then providing any recommendations in regards to how the village should regulate gas-powered leaf blowers. Initial discussions of the SEC were held on January 17th, 2023 at the regular meeting, where village staff were asked to work with our village attorney to develop a draft ordinance for the SEC's review. Following public comment and a discussion at its February 21st, 2023 meeting, the SEC ultimately unanimously voted to recommend the village board immediately implement a seasonal ban on the use of gas-powered leaf blowers for all, with limited exceptions. The village board discussed this recommendation at its February 27th, 2023 meeting and approved the first reading of the ordinance with a 24-month sunset on the exception for use of gas-powered leaf blowers for public parks, school playgrounds, and athletic fields. So we've been provided with the draft. Do I have a motion to consider?
To approve that ordinance.
To approve the ordinance.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Rappin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Hatch. Are there any comments or discussions from the board before we open it up?
I'll comment that I appreciate that the SEC addressed this so quickly and that we're able to get this into effect for this year. I think that's an awesome result, and I know that there'll be lots of people who are very pleased with that. I also understand the need for a 2-year extension, if you will, for some of these larger tracts of land that are listed in A, 465A. So I appreciate the need to take those more slowly, and I would like to see all of it sunset in a couple of years, but I understand B, C, and D are exceptions that continue after those 2 years are up. We have those limited exceptions, and they're pretty limited, continue even beyond April 1st of 2025. That's the only piece of it that I'm a little bit concerned about. I would like to be able to get to more like 100%, but I talked to Drew about this and found that other communities have similar exceptions. I think if we continue these exceptions and we hear from the homeowners that it's continuing to really bother them, the ones that are adjacent to these areas, we need to be open to reconsidering it. But I'm in support of it as written, with this limited exception, the exceptions that are listed in B, C, and D.
Yeah, and for clarification, this is with reference to Chapter 6, leaf blower regulations, Section 4-6-5, which details the exceptions. And so B is areas of public golf courses.
In-play areas.
In-play areas of public golf courses. C is construction projects involving paving, repair, or patching of public streets. And D being cleanup activities necessary as a result of extreme weather or other emergency conditions as determined and authorized in advance by the village administrator. And not in advance of the emergency, but in advance of the use, because we don't know when the emergencies will happen.
Can I ask a question about that one in particular? So if we had a terrible storm and homeowners had leaves and branches, things down on their properties, could they go to the village hall and say, Drew, can I use my leaf blower?
I think practically speaking, there's probably been a handful of storms that would reach like this level of magnitude. I can think of some straight line windstorms that we've had that have had generated significant debris. I think the village, what likely would happen is that people would clean up, and then that if somebody was made a complaint about use of this, we would say this is an exception. We wouldn't issue some statement saying you may feel free to use your gas.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Post hoc predetermination. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, I am very supportive of this as written.
Thank you. Any other further comment from the board?
I was just curious, did we receive any other comments from any residents or anything within the last 2 weeks? We haven't gotten any additional comments, have we?
I don't think so.
I didn't see any. Okay.
No.
Okay.
I received some prior to this, both couple in support and couple concerned about it, but nothing in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any comments from the community in the room? Okay. Hearing none?
Nothing online either, it doesn't appear.
Okay. All right.
Did Commissioner Walsh wish to speak?
I'm good. That makes us, that's sort of this. I brought extra cost stuff that we had, put together, but
Thank you. Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
And President Pro Tem / Trustee Inkerman.
Aye. Great, the motion carries. Thank you.
Great.
All right, next we'll go to the regularly listed order on the agenda, which is, next is the village finance report, the warrant report for February 28th to March 13th. The expenditure of village funds for payments of invoices in the amount of $260,515.27 for the period February 28th through March 13th, 2023. The warrant report was attached for that same period, February 28th to March 13th, 2023, $260,515.27. The invoice register report shows checks with a status of open or paid. All checks with the status of open are computer-generated for the board's final approval, and checks with the status of paid are manual checks that have been processed. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Trustee Markey and Trustee Fisher. Any questions for Bettina regarding any of the items that are on the listed warrant report? I see none. I'm hearing none. This is a roll call, please.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
And Trustee Inkerman.
Aye. All right, next we have the village administrator's report.
So, interesting enough, the state of Illinois has reached, the Department of Transportation has reached out to the village under the headline of 41176. It's in their multi-year program. I wouldn't say construction is imminent, but it's closer today than it was yesterday. The state has sent a letter to the village looking for some feedback on close to 800 pages of technical drawings.
Oh, my goodness.
And I called them today and let them know that their letter asked for a response in 30 days. And I thought that was probably unreasonable. He said, my mistake, it was a form letter. Just get back feedback to us within a few months, that would be great. But they're really looking, and the village does not have to answer these questions today. The very three specific questions that they are asking as part of our plan review to get back to them with. One is the idea that the village has these emergency strobe lights at these signalizing intersections that public safety officials use to preempt the signal and allow them to pass through intersections quicker and more safely, and they're asking to continue that. Certainly village staff, the public safety managers will look to see that through. There's cost participation, but it's around $21,000. That's not a surprise. That was talked about years ago, and for you who weren't on the board years ago when the village first completed phase one, I'm trying to remember when was that? Was that 2013 phase one was completed? 15. So at the conclusion of phase one, there's a letter of intent that IDOT will hand off to the primary agency, usually municipalities, where these improvements are taking place, asking us to sign off on these big picture issues. This is one of them that they talked about. Then the village chose not to sign the letter of intent because it could be decades. And we said, look, we're okay. The state doesn't require it, but this was something that was talked about at that time. Likewise, the sidewalks that they're asking about, would the village be willing to accept maintenance of these, the maintenance and replacement of the sidewalks, and same with the service road. That was something that they tossed out there, that the village, they want the village to take that jurisdiction of those public improvements and being in close proximity, and a lot of those improvements would be within village limits, but not all of them. They're asking the village to take those on. I think at this point, this is really more informational, but if there's any comments or thoughts, or if there's a desire for the village board to maybe, not unlike what came of the LPR conversations where two trustees were assigned to kind of maybe see this through, to maybe, right now we know that the village engineer Jeff Hansen will seek assistance with an engineering firm to review the technical documents, but maybe there's a desire to have a subcommittee of trustees to look at these other improvements and maybe make a recommendation to the balance of the board.
So would that be appropriate at this level where we've got this 800-page document now, or would it be in a further phase when we're,
Yeah.
you know, we can see some light at the end of some tunnel?
No, I think it's fair to IDOT and to the idea for the village to plan for this. I think the village should hire some technical expertise to go through the drawings, get back, and like I said in the memo, there could be other policy issues that pop up through this evaluation of the technical drawings, and we can bring it all back. But
Okay.
just, you don't have to decide any of this today, just throwing that out there.
It's just putting it on the radar.
Yep.
And for us to thoughtfully consider for long periods of time while we wait for this to cycle back.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Drew, if we're going to have a consultant work with Jeff on this, would it be possible at the end of those 30 days to get some sort of just a summary of what they found in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other either discussions regarding this 41-176 interchange, or is that the end of your?
No, I think the only other nuance I would mention is that in my conversations with the engineer from IDOT, he mentioned that, before even this phase 2 happens, that they have to complete the relocation of pump 37, which is the stormwater pump that has not necessarily done its job over the years there. There's flooding at those intersections and significant rain events. And so they have to complete the relocation of that, as well as put in, I think it's labeled on the drawings as a BMP, or best management practice, which is likely going to be a stormwater retention facility in the northwest corner of the intersection. They would need to do all that in advance of any of the construction work, because they have to solve the stormwater so that they can construct this without being underwater. And in order to do that, they have to complete the land acquisition, because they're going to have to acquire additional property to do that BMP, and they haven't even started that.
Yeah.
So I just want to give you another indication of the pace that this is on. Land Ac takes at a minimum 2 years, usually much more. So while this, again, is being talked about, it's in, I think it was even in the governor's announcement a couple years back, is saying this is in the multi-year plan now. It's still, I think IDOT's brochure says it best, this is going to take some time. That's literally one of the names of their brochures describing construction.
So question, how, if any way, will their work, specifically with that replacement of the pump, impact our stormwater management?
I'll let Jeff answer it.
That pump, they're gonna build their own dedicated pipe from 41 to the Skokie, so it won't. The only impact it had on us is we had to spend $200,000 moving our water main out of the way of that future pipe over last summer. But it's all their system, and it goes right to the Skokie.
And maybe this is where you're headed, maybe not, but the intersection to the south is where they constructed a similar type facility, a pumping station. Lake Forest decided to take the jurisdictional control of that.
Right.
And so now they're on the hook to replace that whenever that breaks down, and they're responsible for the maintenance thereof.
Right.
So, but that is a similar type of improvement that'll take place.
Thanks, John.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Thank you. Village president's report. There is no village president's report. Next is the acceptance of the correspondence. Please note all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational reports on February 24th and March 3rd, 2023. And I think that's it. So do I have a motion to accept the correspondence?
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Markey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next I have agenda item 11, which is a resolution approving an amendment to a professional services agreement with William Shalhas for services relating to the recording and broadcasting of public meetings such as the one we are participating in right now. The Village of Lake Bluff and the City of Lake Forest cooperate by way of their intergovernmental agreement to provide for the operation of 2 public access television stations. Since 2017, the village has contracted independently with William Bill Shalhus to record and produce each meeting held in Village Hall. Mr. Shalhus films approximately 68 meetings per year of the village board and other advisory bodies of the village. The initial term of Mr. Shalhus's contract expired June 29th, 2018, and is automatically renewed on a month-to-month basis since that time. Mr. Shalhus has recently requested an amendment to the contract to adjust the payable rates for several of his services, including an increase in the payable rate for filming a meeting from $225 to $250 for an additional 3-year term. So, based on this, the estimated cost of the agreement is, with the Village Board of Trustees, about 20 meetings per year, an annual cost of $5,000. Planning and Zoning, 12 meetings per year, annual cost of $3,000. Historical Preservation, 12 meetings per year, again, cost of $3,000. The ABR, the Architectural Board of Review, 12 meetings per year, cost of $3,000. The Sustainability and Enhancement Committee, isn't that it? Isn't it SEC, Sustainability and Enhancement Committee, as opposed to?
It's the Sustainability and Community Enhancement Committee.
Okay. 12 meetings per year at $3,000. And
I'm like you, I prefer the ACC to the SEC, if that's where you're going.
well, why did we call it the SEC then, instead of the SCE? Anyway, miscellaneous hours, 4 hours a month.
SCEC?
For $4,080 for an estimated total of $21,080. As the agreement's 3-year cost is estimated at $63,240, this exceeds the village administration's maximum purchasing authority of $25,000, so staff requests that the board approve the amendment by resolution. So that document was updated and attached for your review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Rappin. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Trustee Ryder. Do we have any comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none. Do we have anybody online who'd be interested in chiming in?
If you wish to make a comment, you're attending the meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand, you'll be recognized. None.
Okay, this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Hatch? And Trustee Hankin.
Aye. Next, we have item number 12, a resolution authorizing the purchase and a service agreement with Flock Group for a fixed license plate reading recognition camera system. Like fellow North Shore communities and other law enforcement agencies across the nation, the Lake Bluff Police Department endeavors to reduce the frequency of car theft and burglary to motor vehicles and to aid in response and investigations by initiating a fixed license plate recognition camera system, also known as LPR. As discussed at the February 13th Committee of the Whole meeting, the proposed fixed LPR cameras will be in addition to and synchronized with the planned installation of mobile LPR on police vehicles, which is expected to be operational no later than this November. The department evaluated similar products and recommends the purchase of 8 fixed LPR camera locations from the Flock Group to capture license plate and vehicle data of inbound vehicles entering the primary residential areas of the village. The cameras will provide police officers and the communications center with notifications of potentially wanted vehicles when passing fixed LPR camera locations. Officers will have the ability to historically search the database, currently set for a 30-day retention period, only for other bona fide law enforcement reasons. The Flock system provides for the sharing of data between other law enforcement agencies and private property owners that choose to install Flock cameras. Because the village's purchasing policy provides that solicitation of bids may be waived when a specific brand or product can ensure interoperability and uniformity, as in the case with the Flock system, The chief of police recommends entering into a 2-year agreement at a cost not to exceed $22,800 for the first year that includes hardware installation, software, and data storage. As you recall, there are available funds in the current budget due to a police department locker project that will be reduced in scope. A cost of $20,000 is expected for the second year of the agreement, which will cover hardware maintenance, associated software, and data storage. Finally, the village staff will work with trustees Ryder and Hatch to finalize the departmental general order that defines the administration, the use, maintenance, and deployment of the LPR systems. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Rappin. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, trustee Ryder. I'll open it up now for comments or discussion regarding the LPR camera system under consideration.
I'll start unless somebody else wants to. We had a lengthy discussion about this at one of the more recent meetings, and we've since gotten some feedback from the public that I believe we have resolved some of the concerns that were raised by some of the trustees, including myself and others, that were similar to this public comment that we had, a concern about how this might be used. My sense of it is that I have now looked at the draft of the general order that will be the governing document, and maybe that's the wrong phrase, but will provide the guardrails around which this system will be used. So I think the general order is very close to being ready. I think it just requires a discussion, perhaps a sit down to make sure that we understand each other. But with that notion in mind, that we're going to have the general order fully vetted, it'll be posted, as I understand it, as our significant general orders in other circumstances are. And I think we're going to be as transparent as we possibly can with the types of data that we're providing, and only utilize this information for law enforcement purposes. So having read through the general order, I think that the concerns that are raised by this citizen, some of the concerns that we had the last time we talked, are being addressed there, and they're very close to being adequately addressed in the draft that I've seen.
Thank you, trustee Ryder. Do I have any other comments?
So, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has any other comments on this. First, I wanted to thank trustee Hatch and trustee Ryder for working on the general
Order.
General order. Thank you. I think I was probably a couple weeks ago when we talked about this, the person who brought up a lot about privacy, and I still have some issues with the privacy, but I spoke to Drew. I think there were some conversations, and the idea of the transparency portal, which is being used in Park and other places, Piedmont, California uses it as well, I think is a great compromise there, where we can see kind of how the police department is using the data. They can post audit reports, and they can let us know who they're sharing the data with. I think my issue that I have this evening with this is that the general order isn't completed yet, and so I'm being asked to vote on something that's not actually done yet, and I'm not necessarily comfortable with that. I would prefer that we wait and vote on this in a couple weeks when the general order is actually completed. I don't necessarily see a reason why we have to complete this tonight, why we couldn't wait and complete all the information and have the general order finalized and then go ahead and vote on it. So outside of the fact that I know it's going to be a great tool for the police department, I think I've come to terms with the privacy issues on it, and I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels, but I'm still a little uncomfortable voting on, not a little, I am uncomfortable voting on something that's not finalized. So that's kind of where I stand tonight.
I agree with Joy.
I agree with Joy as well. And I'm grateful that you said it more eloquently than I was going to say it. I've been wrestling with this completely since our last discussion on it. And it's my trust in you two and my trust in Chief that is moving me towards being more comfortable with it. But if we were going to vote today, I don't know that I would vote yes.
Yeah, and I had brought up a similar comment with Drew earlier, so I think there's a general consensus about a little bit of discomfort there. I do think that there are a number of, I ultimately think we're going to get comfortable with this, so I think it's really a matter of dotting our I's and crossing our T's that we're comfortable with it. I did have a chance to ask the police chief how long the order time was, 8 weeks. Drew, I would ask you, I know that our next meeting is not happening because of spring break, so when would the following meeting be? Because we do have a board here who's going to time out.
This board will still be here.
Okay,
Not until the first meeting in May when there would be a transition, but it would be the 10th.
okay, and then Trustee Hatch and Trustee Ryder, thank you. I mean, is this something that you guys feel you can work on with Drew in the next couple of weeks and finalize?
And just so everybody, and if that's your direction, that's fine, totally fine. Matt, could you maybe at least, there's one piece of data so everybody knows, and this is not, what does it take to put you in this Buick today kind of conversation, but the idea that that there is a price change that will
Yes.
occur effective April 1.
April 1 will have a price change of from $2,500 to $3,000 per location. So there will be a cost increase.
So that's $500 times 8, which
Times
is
eight.
$4,000.
That would be reoccurring then.
Right.
Would be reoccurring for 2 years? Or
So it would be, that's the price per camera moving forward. So you lock in at $2,500 now, or after the April 1st, it would be $3,000.
You lock in for how long? I'm sorry.
For 2 years, and what they've told us that thereafter is where the other departments have been staying at that price point moving forward.
Oh, so you're grandfathered forever in
They're
perpetuity?
saying, well, we'll see how that all fares out, but as we understand it, yes.
That's where there's the other alternative that Matt shared with me this afternoon from the sales rep, was that there's a 90-day period that the village could enter into an agreement that is at or.
Essentially like a trial period, if that would make it where.
But you could lock in the price.
Lock in, and then if for some reason we choose
Can't
not
get in that
to,
Buick.
then we
can
can
get in
back
that
out of that.
So but we'd have to invest in the hardware for that 90-day trial.
I think it's 2,800 for the installation costs. So hardware and service, it's all like lumped into one for each camera location. So that's kind of their model.
Yeah.
Is like a one-stop shop for pricing.
So repeat, if you will, the idea is that it's a per camera charge. It's $2,500 now, and that would be in effect for 2 years or for as long as we keep these?
That's our understanding of it. I haven't seen anything different on the agreement. I don't know if Peter has with some of the other municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate to not to not take advantage of pricing, but I don't want to force something through that largely we have consensus that we're not feeling good about, but we all kind of want to just feel like we've done our due diligence, and it might be unfortunate that it costs a little bit more, but I'm sensing from the board that what we're doing is buying time and buying peace of mind that we're doing what we should be doing.
And community trust. I mean, I think the correspondence isn't the only voice that I've heard from, and yeah. I don't think this is the kind of decision that necessarily hinges on a financial, on the financial impact.
There's that intangible piece of community trust and, being good stewards of all the decisions that we make. We want to do what's right. It may not always be the cheapest solution, but hopefully it's the right solution. And it also sounds like the two board members who've been tasked with taking that closer look or the deeper dive feel comfortable that the next meeting time, which would actually be in about 4 weeks, you would have some level of comfort that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. And again, this general, can you just give me in layman's term the idea of what the general order is, who generates it, who uses it, what exactly
Sure.
are we looking at?
So general orders are sort of how we operate within the police department, right? It's sort of a guideline, if you will, of what is allowed for whatever the activity is. In this case, it'd be for the license plate reader program. These are taken from multiple other agencies as well that have already implemented these programs in our case, right? We're not the first one doing this, so we've had the great opportunity of looking at other policies and seeing how those work well for those communities, even in some communities where it's been questioned or asked to some of these same extent, right? Like, hey, how does the community feel about this? So we've looked at those policies and we've taken them, we've looked at every aspect of it, and that's what you're seeing in front of you now is that draft policy, if you will, that reflects what we feel at this time is how we're going to operate this.
And my question to you would be, when you looked at a wide range of other communities that use this technology and they create their own internal order of how it's going to be used, what was the Lake Bluff twist, or what might we be doing that reflects Lake Bluff in this document, or is it pretty similar to what other?
It's pretty similar to other organizations. There's some that are go through another product that creates these that are more or differently legally vetted. We look at CLIA as being a CLIA agency that we adhere to CLIA standards and expectations. In some cases, they'll say like, hey, there might be different levels of who's reporting to who, where we may have to change that for Lake Bluff. Who's going to handle more of the program? It may just be one person, where somewhere else may have been a couple different layers of supervision.
Right. So because we're a very small community and a small police department, we may not be able to have all those higher level checks and balances, but that has been thoughtfully considered and incorporated into the procedures that come out of this general order.
That is correct. That is correct. And then with that too, again, as we look at this together and try to make sure that that's really understood, is the intention there.
When on the in the draft to go, it talks about establishing protocols for various things such as access and storage and all these other things. Would those be done previous to you installing the cameras?
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time?
So in the go, it talks about the establishment of protocols for the flock system. When would those be done?
So are you talking about how does the company do it or how will we do it? So we're doing it as we see the product, right, it's going to be searched for certain purposes, obviously law enforcement purposes, right? I.e. it's, or it comes in, there's a hit off of a potentially stolen vehicle coming in, right? That's communicated through the system and from the dispatch center potentially to our officers. So they're responding to that. They're going to check to see if that's an accurate hit or not, right? If you're looking at it historically, the historical process, right? There's internal measure or internal process within the system to say, hey, this officer is checking this for this reason and providing that. So we need to know the reason why they're checking that.
So can an officer check any image that's taken? It doesn't have to be a hit image?
They can check other images, but they have to have a reason to be checking those images.
But
So
they can check them?
They can, but again, it has to be within the reason why. Okay, so it has to be like, hey, we believe that this vehicle was involved in a theft at a business. There's a reason why. Legitimate law enforcement purposes for checking that.
And to be clear on that, so if an officer is going to use this tool, they would need to sign in under their own badge number, log into it, an identifiable, traceable method, and that they would have to justify the use of it. For example, Matt's talked a lot about various, I would call them criminal investigations, but there are other reasons that the village police department may want to use it for we can just put in hits for a missing person. Maybe somebody's a memory issue, Alzheimer's issue, or something that in the community they wanted to find that person. It's not a criminal activity, but it's to help a public safety matter. So there could be other reasons specifically different than criminal investigation, but it could be a public safety emergency nonetheless. But those would be some of the reasons. But again, an officer would have to have like, I don't think it's like a drop-down menu where it's justification, click, but it's
It'd be like a case by like a case number. And
case log. They would enter in the reason why. There would be a log of why they were doing it, for what purpose. And so So I guess, and then there's an officer, in this case, the village is anticipating assigning the deputy chief as the manager of the program who would check and inspect that, and then there's an evaluation period done, an audit that would be reviewed periodically to ensure that it's satisfying the standards.
Sure, right, I get that, but when would you have the protocols done?
So those are essentially it. So as we do the general order and we have that discussion, we're going to relay that it's understandable to everyone here, that is the process.
Those protocols are in the general order.
Yes.
Okay, so, but if I assume that they're gonna be given to, well, you're saying that these are all of the protocols in the general?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, for example, license, like a hot list would include stolen vehicles, license plate numbers from stolen vehicles, wanted subjects, like I said, missing persons, amber alerts,
Silver alerts.
and any other criteria is determined by the chief of police or his designee. So that could be something else, but again, that would have to get reviewed and approved. But it's pretty limited.
But if somebody were to say, I need to know if this person's been at my house while I'm gone because I suspect somebody's having an affair, that's not a type of use.
Correct.
I mean, that's kind of a horrible thing to say, but that's the kind of thing that people would say,
Yeah.
this is important to me, I need to know,
Yeah.
you know? But that's not a valid use.
But other law enforcement agencies could ask us to include hot items that, like, say, maybe the city of Lake Forest could say, hey, we're working a case for a missing person. Could you add this to your hot list for a period of time to help try to solve that particular issue?
Understood.
And who adds to your hot list?
I didn't hear you.
Who adds to the hot list?
So the hot list, so there's a state, so the state of Illinois will add to the hot list, so it's vetted through them, but there's also the opportunity to add localized ones. So let's say that we do get it like hey, someone is missing, something is happening, we can do that pretty quickly through the system.
Yes, trustee Markey?
Yeah, so I just have a couple of things. So when we talk about other criteria determined by the chief of police or designee, number 5 under definitions, that's a little vague to me.
And that's something that we can clarify. So some of those reasons are like, sometimes things happen that it doesn't fit the category, right? And we're like, hey, something came up, what do we do? So that, hey, let's talk to the chief of police who says, hey, this is a reason why you have a little ambiguity for that it may be that one-off situation that we didn't anticipate.
I understand that. I think I'm a little concerned that that's so vague that it could encompass a lot of different things. And again, we're talking about a lot of personal data that we're basically finding with these cameras. So I have a little bit of an issue with that line, just in general. And I don't know if maybe there's a way we can word that a little differently that kind of brings it down a little bit.
Or have some additional review at, I don't know, an additional review to
Like a second person look at it, kind of, I know what you're trying to say. I don't want to bog it down. I don't want to make it so.
No, we don't want to, we want you to be able to use the tool. It
Correct.
needs to be nimble, but it also, what we're trying to do is say, what are the bumpers that we could put on it so that we know it's not just one person having so much control that they can further their own personal agendas or whatever that might be.
And then I'm sorry, I have one other thing too. When we talked about the transparency portal, I really feel strongly about that. I think it's important, and included in that is the audits of how the data is used. Can we put that in the general order under data storage and retention? Can we have something in there saying that we will have a transparency portal for the public to view? It doesn't have to be fancy, it just has to.
And do we have an example of what that might look like, or what, I mean?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Flock offers.
Yeah,
something.
so I just thought if we can kind of show what it looks like, that might help.
Drew, do you have that available, or?
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
So this is Piedmont, California, and this is not too dissimilar from other communities that have this, who take advantage of this, I'll call it, I don't know, module from Flock. but it lists, so their data retention is actually longer than what we're talking about, right? 30 days is what the village has been talking about. 39 cameras, that's more, about 30 more than what the village is talking about, but it lists, this is not unlike the materials for marketing purposes that Flock shared with everybody, all the departments, but it's essentially saying, here's what it's used for, here's what it's not used for, just kind of a reminder to folks who may be dialing into this to learn more about it. They do list here, and this is common, I think I showed Village of Oak Park, Illinois doesn't list this, but you can, and this is all the agencies that Piedmont is sharing with their data, and I mean that will ebb and flow with use, and I don't know how long typically, let's say a Lake Forest asks the village to reciprocate on some hot list item. Matt, do you know, is that, what period of time usually does that cover?
It can be entered into a standing MOU where they would actually have that reoccurring access. If it's, you know, where it wants to be a one-off, it could be a one-off. You know, that would be some of those agreements with the communities around us helping us as well with their locations that they would have access. But again, when they use it, we also know that they use it through that portal, through the auditing. So it gives us the leeway to say, why is this being used?
So you wouldn't have to maintain that, because that also seems like all of a sudden another entity in the area reaches out to you. You're saying this would pop out of the software saying these are entities. You don't, as a police department, have to spend your valuable resources maintaining that. The software will show that.
So we would, those MOUs there would be that those agencies have similar access as a department in the sense of they're able to get the data versus asking for it, right? But there was still the log of that data
Right.
being checked.
Right. I just was afraid of you having such an additional burden of providing all this and, you know, all the, that you have to hire somebody to maintain this, feed the beast, but you're saying that that's not going to happen.
So this is, I'm bringing up the audit mode. This is from, again, from the Piedmont, California.
Can you make
So it
that
doesn't show
bigger?
Yeah, but I think at the top there, it gives like the ID, and then it gives the date, the ID, the login, the date, which camera. Like, it gives a lot of good information.
So it would help if you could zoom a little bit, just a tad.
And I would imagine the reason there at the end is the case number. Is that, would you?
Much better.
What would you think, Matt? That when it says reason?
That might be a case number.
Case number?
I'm not sure what their policy is on
Camera count. Yeah, I think we would hope to do something a little more useful than this.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that's one of the things we talked about with the idea that the Flock transparency portal is, we thought, okay, but I don't know how helpful that is to somebody curious. I mean, it's good general, it gives you an idea about usage.
Doesn't have a license plate number on there,
No,
No.
right? So you can't go searching for a license plate number.
Correct.
no.
But it does give a category for reason, which I assuming that there may be some, you know,
That's the case number, I bet.
link to find out what does that code mean, right? You know, for what purpose is that?
Oh,
But it's, I mean, it seems to me if you were doing this, you might want to just list, okay, well, there's a reckless driver. Maybe you would have some other data to say, missing
What those
person,
are,
missing
yeah.
person, you know, you can make this more user-friendly. is where I'm
So
going.
these are not everybody who drove through town. This is the hits, right?
Yeah, like, I imagine we would have a lot less than this, honestly. Would be
Oh,
my
yeah.
guess.
No,
Yeah,
we don't
I
have 39
I'm
cameras.
just guessing this is, they have 39 cameras, they're probably, you know, they're
And they had like
a larger,
150,000,
it's a larger community.
yeah, it's a much bigger community.
I have a question on the front of that. It said that Piedmont owns the data that the police department does, but on ours, it says that Flock does. Do you know, since they're Flock as well, what the difference is?
Yeah. Peter, you want to take that? Well,
Which part of it?
owning the data.
Yeah, so the only data, we don't own any data unless we ask for it. That's the only, before we ask for it, we don't own it. If it's FOIA'd, it's not our data, so we wouldn't be responding. I mean, we would be declining the FOIA because we don't have public records. Once we ask for it and it's on our system, then we own it. And then
Another separation, right?
if we get a FOIA for it, all of the exemptions would apply to protect personal information, privacy issues that we apply to all of our FOIA requests.
And so are they only requesting, what information would we request that we retain data for? I'm just worried about like subpoenaing and like the amount of administration work that goes into it. And I know that there's a response to one of the constituents' answers, but it doesn't jive with what that said.
So if it was, and through FOIA, so if we brought down, let's say there was one vehicle we were looking for, and we actually then captured that image, brought it into our system, if you will, for investigative purposes, i.e. we made a copy of it, it then becomes a FOIA-able record through that case.
Was that your question, or were you asking how we get it from Flock?
Like more so like if you own the data, you're gonna be subpoenaed, especially if it's being used for a criminal investigation. A defense attorney is gonna subpoena you. So I'm just trying to figure out how much of this data you're holding, so it's not a huge administrative nightmare to comply with subpoenas, because that can become an issue.
So we're only holding what we take off. So whatever we take off is what we actually are responsible for, for that. So it may be, you know, if we have one theft, it's one license plate. If it's, you know, one burglary and there's one license plate possibly associated, that's what we would have.
Okay.
So maybe one data entry per day would be a hot day in Lake Bluff is, I mean, who
And
knows?
we don't know. And it could be then also too, if the, you know, if the vehicle's, let's say it is a stolen vehicle.
Right.
Comes through and it strikes one of the LPR locations, obviously, and we do our confirmation on it that it is it, and we do take some semblance of action, then we would probably print it out as well, which would then give us that in our records.
Can I just give you a what-if scenario? So let's say we have two vehicles that are stolen, and we know one license plate, and we put it in and get a hit. We know that there's a second vehicle, but we don't know the license plate. How can we access the data, or can we not? Because we don't really know what we're looking for, right? It's almost like we have to fish and say, okay, well, the first one went through at 8 p.m., and we from reports know that two vehicles were going fast together. So here we have this what-if scenario where we have one car that has a known report and a license plate, and we want to see it go through, and then we have the other one. It's almost like we have to go fishing for something that we don't know what we're looking for. Can we use the database in that case?
So
I'm just trying to flush it out, like what it might look like.
Sure. So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking if we have one known vehicle registration and one unknown, but maybe we have like a color or anything like that.
Right.
And we have a time frame, right?
Right.
So we may be able to then say, okay, that other vehicle went into town at this time. Remember, this is inbound, not outbound. So it's inbound traffic. The vehicle comes past at this time, and maybe we knew it was a blue car. So that's all we have. Well, we can see that one car that we have the known, and we can check that little time frame and say, okay, do we see a blue car? Okay, we can say there's a blue car. If it matches as best as possible, then we now have that data is now ours and we own it. Because we pulled it off of that server.
I feel like there could be a lot of issues with that. It's just me, but I feel like that's a lot of conjecture. I guess I feel like I would want things to be actual hits before we're following them. I know that ties your hands a little bit, but the idea of just like, hey, we're looking for a blue car during this, I know it would be more than that, but I just feel like there's a lot of room for error there.
I was shared a story real quick.
Yeah.
On an investigation, like a kidnapping investigation.
Okay.
Where all they had was the color of a car. And this was from another department, so this is just my understanding what they relayed to me. They didn't give me the full case. That they were able to, in that time frame, find that colored vehicle. It was like whatever color it was, you know, blue. And, you know, match the time frame. They were able to put everything together and tie that case up based on that. Just because if someone knew the color of the car that they got.
But there was an initial legitimate case, you
There
know,
was-
you
there
could
was a-
reference case XYZ.
There was a reported kidnapping case, yes.
Right, and in this case, if we knew of one vehicle and it was linked to an incident and the other one was just verbally reported, there's something real that it's associated with. We just don't go generally fishing for blue cars.
Right.
Without there being a reason.
The reason for it.
Right.
And are we asking Flock to look for the blue cars during that period of time and give us that data?
That data spits out from Flock on the screen.
30 days, we have it, right?
We've got
Yeah,
everybody.
for the
Yes,
time
like,
frame.
going-
So the
Right.
time frame window,
But who is doing the look? Does Flock do the search, or do we?
that's the police department does the search.
So Chief, can you finish that story, even if it's a hypothetical? so we can really follow through. So there's a kidnapping reported, someone saw a blue car.
No, so it was the person who was actually abducted. All they knew was they were able to get away, but they were able to find, the color of the car was all they had, and it was like a sedan. And my understanding is they were then able to triangulate between other cameras, and they found the associated cell phone. They figured out who the car was, and they put the case together. So I mean, that was pretty interesting. These were some of I've shared stories from other agencies. We called 20-something, I think it was 20-something municipalities around the country, just kind of see how some of these things were. And these were some of the stories that we were hearing, solving homicides, hit and runs to, missing persons.
So in that case where you were searching for blue cars in this vicinity and, what you're looking at is all the cars, and then you pick out the blue cars, you being the police agency that's doing the inquiry, do then we own that data of what you searched through? Is that considered in our purview, or is it just what we then call out and say, these were the 3 blue cars that merit further investigation? Because I understand Trustee Hatch's concern about, well, let's say we just search the database for a whole day. I mean, we had 10,000 cars go by. What do we then kind of own that data? How does it really look?
My understanding too, Peter, if I'm not mistaken, is that if we pull that data out, i.e. we take the actual physical possession of that image, then it becomes ours.
That image,
Yes.
correct.
So in that case, the 3 blue cars that we narrowed it down to would be ours, not the
Not the hours and hours and
200
hours.
blue cars that went through.
Correct.
Because it's not
So it's a
being
difference
downloaded.
between looking and downloading.
Yeah.
That's,
I guess.
Right.
That's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
could be
It's
looking and
a
then
search with
download
certain
3.
criteria.
And then those are the 3, and then those are FOIAble, right? The 3 that we download are then our property, we own them.
Correct.
I mean, I suppose, is there a world where we're not retaining anything, where you're just searching, you see it on the screen or on the database that you're searching before we become owners of the data? I just want to also eliminate,
Right.
wherever we can eliminate the potential for subpoenas and even, the FOIA request that is going to cost staff time and money.
The only thing that would be subpoenable from us is what we put on our system.
Right.
So if we're looking at a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't go on our system, they can subpoena Flock, but they can't
Right.
subpoena us.
Right. I think we touched on that last time too.
Not
Right.
FOIA, it wouldn't necessarily, it could be subject to FOIA, but chances are we would have reasons to exempt it for law enforcement purposes, so it would not be, you wouldn't share it with.
Okay.
And if we ruled out 2 other vehicles, then my assumption would be they're no longer associated with the case, would that maybe fall under privacy or not? I don't know. That'd be.
Perhaps.
So I think we've had a good opportunity to ask a lot of questions, and it's my sense that we probably still want to take that time to kind of further contemplate and review the general order to see if there are additional questions or, concerns to be addressed. Does that sound like the consensus of the group? So at this point in time, would I, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one
Yes.
more thing. So we're already in negotiations with them to get the cameras. And from a cost standpoint, the holdup now is the board, because we're trying to determine language and how we want the general order to look. We may have the opportunity to go back to them and say, look, we're planning on doing this. We're just hammering out the details. Can you hold that price for us? It's not an unreasonable ask.
We'll ask them.
Yeah.
Of course, yep.
Yeah. They might be able to do it for us.
Given this discussion, right, so if Trustee Ryder and Hatch work on this, the next time we're going to get together is 4 weeks from now. Are we going to have this discussion over again? Do we need to have an interim discussion so that we can vote that night? I'm just,
No, I appreciate that question.
Is it poor form to have a committee of the whole, probably already have a finance
right
committee
before,
meeting
yeah.
anyway, before that April meeting, where we could discuss it and then that same evening?
With this discussion, I don't feel qualified to be only one of 2 reviewers. I really don't. I don't think I'm going to be able to address your concerns and your concerns and your concerns and everybody's concerns. I don't want to throw
It's a
a
lot of,
monkey
it's a lot of
wrench into it.
pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And my question that I might ask is, when other municipalities, some much larger than ours, went through their thoughtful review and then implemented it, how many have needed to tweak, and how many, and what's the life of this flock camera system? So are we on the cutting edge, or is this has been around and so other municipalities have had 5 years experience? We kind of want to just feel, because we're not going to be able to answer every question. We're not, I mean, even just now, we've been able to ask a lot of what ifs. We can't cover all the what ifs. I mean, I personally feel like you've addressed a lot of the concerns, and I don't want to push anything through that makes anyone feel uncomfortable, but I don't know, given that we're not experts in law enforcement, that maybe we're going to find something that other law enforcement and experience hasn't already discovered. Trustee Rappin?
Just in order to progress this a little bit, I mean, if we put forth a good faith effort to try and answer and satisfy all of our questions and needs, there's going to be what ifs going on forever. There's nothing precluding us from, in the future, from amending the general order, Drew?
Well,
No.
it's not our general order, right? I want to just state.
Yeah, it's
the board's general order.
Police department issues general orders and
Thank you.
SOPs, standard, there's all kinds of directives from the administration and command staff to the officers in terms of how they do their work. And so this is an example of one of those. I don't know that there's been an example where the village board has reviewed a general order in the village since I've been here. I don't think
That's what you said last time we talked. You're like, all right, you and Kate can look at it.
I don't think it's happened, and I made the comment too. And of all the general orders that have been discussed, the one that's the most important in my eyes is the use of force, and that has, but it's not uncommon at all that's a departmental order. I mean, the village police management team works with attorneys to create these documents to guide these activities to be in accordance with law and with common procedures for their safety, for the liability of the village. So this is something that's historically hasn't been done, can be done, but I bet, I don't know for certain, but if we went out and polled those other communities that have already implemented this flock, I haven't seen their policies, their GOs on how this technology is used on their websites. I haven't seen it. The closest I'd seen it is Evanston's human rights policies that they have on their website, but that's not their GO on how this technology is utilized.
Can we get GOs from other?
I'm sure we can. Yeah, and I bet this is produced by, I think this is Alexis next. Was it Lexipol? Lexipol. I'm sorry, Lexipol. Well, I went back to college right there. Lexipol, which is a firm that specializes in providing materials like this, standards for operations that are produced and scrubbed by attorneys and prepared with these types of questions in mind. So if we went and polled them, I don't think they don't post them, and two, they never shared them with their board. Right. That's not to say that's the best in the universe, but I think that's probably what happened.
Right.
Can I just say, like, first of all, I'm thankful that we were able to look at it. I think, it's kind of a big deal what we're doing, I feel like. And I also feel like it produced a really robust conversation this evening. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, Steve, I don't know that I need to rehash everything. I feel like we've kind of talked about a lot of things up here. You've answered a lot of questions. I think if we can go back and make a few tweaks and changes to the general order, then I feel like, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I feel like most people would be relatively comfortable, and we wouldn't have to have another hour-long, 20-minute, whatever, discussion. I don't think it would necessitate a cow unless we got massive feedback from the public saying yay or nay, whatever they would be saying. That being said, I feel like the April 10th meeting, we could come back and vote on it and feel reasonably comfortable with what we're voting on. I don't know how everyone else feels.
So I'll state the perhaps unpopular position that there's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I think this is the way the world has moved. I came a long way from a month ago when I started, with, this is Big Brother, but I think we owe it to the public to put policies and procedures in place on this issue, but the purchasing of the equipment ought not be held up. I think we're going to get them. If we don't get them now, we're going to get them in 2 months. That's perhaps unpopular. I'm confident, though, that we could not connect them to the system, not put them on the poles, not do anything with the equipment until all of us feel comfortable that we know that they're going to be used only for appropriate purposes. I may be the only one who feels that way, and I'm fine, but I think this, with what we know is going on everywhere around us, this is just a matter of time.
Can we have a little more information about it, the deadline? It feels arbitrary. I'm not saying you created it, Chief. I'm feeling a little protective and bristly. It feels like a pressure move where, yeah.
My opinion would be I wouldn't worry so much about the funding. I mean,
Right.
we can always go back and try and reduce that price.
Yes,
I think
I
it's
would
whether, I mean, in my opinion, whether I agree with Susan or not that this is inevitable, and hearing what Trustee Marquis just said, which is we don't need a cow to discuss this. I think we answered most of it today, and it's a few tweaks. I guess I'd agree with Trustee Ryder that if we're just going to make a few tweaks next time, let's just move forward. Let's make the tweaks.
But I'm going to be clear, I'm not going to, if we're still going to make tweaks, I'm not going to vote yes tonight.
I'm right
not
there.
comfortable doing that at all. We may have had a great discussion, but it needs to be final before I'm going to vote yes.
And I respect that
that's-
wholheartedly.
That's just
I do
where I'm
too.
at.
I respect it.
Yeah.
So what we have before us, without anybody making another motion, is to either approve or not this resolution authorizing the purchase. And I would be open if somebody wanted to entertain a motion to put that off until the next board meeting. Those are our options. I mean, there are actually a million other options if you want to create one of those, but
I'll make that motion.
you'll make,
Second.
Do you want me to say the actual motion?
It's a motion to defer this matter until the next board meeting.
A motion to defer this matter until the next board meeting.
thank you, Trustee Marquis. Do I have a second? We have a second from Trustee Hatch. So is that a roll call vote, or is it just all in favor?
We should take a roll.
Okay,
Wait, you want a roll call?
roll call
We should
vote?
probably take a roll.
Okay, let's do that.
You would like me to call the roll?
Yes, could you call the roll, please?
Okay, I don't know if there's any further comment from the public.
I did not ask for that, so I think that it would be appropriate if, at this point in time, there's somebody who's watching virtually who would be interested in raising their hand and making a comment. We would be happy to listen to the comments.
And no comments.
And just to be clear, everybody on the board has had their 2 cents for now, so I think we're ready to call roll call.
This is a motion to defer.
A motion to defer is
Okay.
being discussed here.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Marquis.
Aye.
And Trustee Ankerman.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, that is agenda item 12. Next is agenda item 13, a resolution authorizing the execution of a 3-year contract with TGE Enterprises for public facility landscape maintenance. And I forgot to say this, but thank you, Chief, for answering all those questions. Again, we are doing agenda item 13. Last year, the village competitively bid landscaping services for the Village Hall, Public Safety Building, and train station property. This process yielded 7 bids, with TGF Enterprises Incorporated being the lowest responsive bidder, with a contract price of $13,660 and limitation to only use battery-powered leaf blowers. This contract was for a period of 1 year and is set to expire April 30th, 2023. For your information, TGF crews have performed extremely well and have met with all expectations over the past year. As required by the village's purchasing policy, Staff solicited quotes for this year for the same scope of work with an option to renew for an additional 2-year period. But again, TGF Enterprises of Libertyville was the lowest bid. The Public Works Superintendent recommends the Village Board authorize a contract with TGF Enterprises with an annual price of $13,660 for the current year, price to be held flat from the current agreement, with increases of 3.1% for the remaining 2 years. Staff will be present on Monday evening to answer any questions from the board. Do I have a motion to consider this agenda item 13?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Hatch. Questions or comments from the board? I'm hearing none. I don't hear any questions at all. Nothing from viewers at home.
Nothing from the viewers at home.
All right, well, this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
And Trustee Inkman.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have agenda item 14, which is an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff Municipal Code regarding the use of leaf blowers. Oh, we did that one. I was like, didn't we do this
So
already?
good, we'll do it again.
All right. Agenda item 15, an ordinance amending Title 8 of the Lake Bluff Municipal Code to impose a stormwater utility fee. The village's existing stormwater system has insufficient infrastructure to adequately address all of the village's drainage needs, especially as those needs increase as property owners engage in additional development and climate change increases the number and intensity of storm events. Because the village does not have a dedicated funding source for the maintenance and improvement of the stormwater system, the village's maintenance and improvement of stormwater infrastructure is often limited due to the reliance on the availability of funding from general funds that may be allocated to other projects. Following more than 2 years of study and public engagement, the Village Board of Trustees has determined it is necessary to impose a stormwater utility fee upon users of the stormwater system in order to provide an effective and long-term approach to stormwater management within the village, and to provide an equitable, efficient, certain, and neutral revenue stream for the construction, maintenance, operation, and improvement of the stormwater system. As designed, the stormwater utility fee imposed upon each property within the village will be calculated based upon the extent to which each property uses the stormwater system, using a method to determine the amount of stormwater runoff generated by each property. In response to the public comments received to date and direction provided at the March 1st, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting, the attached draft ordinance reflects, 1, a more robust credit, moved from 50% to a 75% possible reduction in fees for properties that do not drain into the village's stormwater infrastructure. And 2, a limit on the frequency of utility fee increases associated with this program. More specifically, the village board will not increase the utility fee for a minimum period of 5 years. Concerns were raised regarding the potential increases in the fee without limitation versus the Illinois property tax extension limit regulations, which do set a max level and certain procedures for annual increases exceeding a set threshold. The village board also discussed holding second reading of this ordinance, effective date of July 1st, 2023, for a minimum of 30 days to allow time for more public comment, to finalize communication plans, and to hear from local institutions and commercial businesses. So the reports attached were the updated subject ordinance and the staff memo regarding the stormwater utility. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Markey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Rappin. Well, we have talked about the stormwater utility fee extensively, but perhaps we have more comments and discussions from the board before we.
I'll just summarize my thought of, I think this is a necessary fee. I think the system we put in place is as fair as it can be without creating undue burden on the Lake Bluff administration, and I'm in support of this.
Thank you, Trustee Rappin. Any other comments?
I'll just say, you know, it's taken us a long time to get here. I feel like we've had a lot of really good discussions. I haven't always agreed with everything, but I do agree that we need the utility fee. We need to work on our stormwater infrastructure. I'm really happy to see the five-year minimum period where we won't increase the fee. I would have really liked to have seen a cap on what we would be spending, or what we would be asking our residents for, but I also understand the need for compromise. And I feel like we've spent hours talking about this, so I'm comfortable with it, how it's written, and I appreciate all the time that board members have discussed it and staff has spent on it.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Yeah, I'll echo the sentiment. I think it's, the draft as it is a lovely illustration of the thoughtful process that this volunteer board has dedicated to making sure that we answer as many questions as we can. We listen to the voices of our community, and I'm pleased with it as well, and I'm looking forward to voting yes on this.
Any further comments to share?
I would offer, you had a comment earlier, a question earlier today. I have a slide up there. This is the slide that we shared with folks as part of the informational sessions that we did. And I want to point out the one-time incentive payments for best practices. The draft ordinance, the first version actually had dollar amounts in there, and those dollar amounts have not changed conceptually. This is what the numbers are for that. The draft ordinance just says as placed in the comprehensive fee ordinance, and you may have forgotten, or maybe not, don't know, don't recall, but these are the numbers that had been talked about. Again, there's a cap of 1,000, and users would have to choose between this or seeking the 75% or pursuing the 100%. But those are the incentive paths that have been outlined thus far, and again, those are the numbers. And
She had asked me about it,
and I said, I'll make sure to show a slide tonight.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those who are listening online, do we have any comments or questions?
Don't impede? No,
I-
doesn't appear so.
I'm sorry, I just had one last thing that I wanted to add. As we look at that fee and as we talk about increasing it in the future, I would just hope that future boards, and that they discuss that as much as we have discussed it, that they really spend time thinking about how they want to adjust that fee and increase it. I think it has impacts that across our residents that we don't always fully know. And so I would just ask going forward that I won't be here on the board, but there'll be a lot of other people, a lot of other smart people that are be making these decisions, and that they really take the time to think about when they're decide to increase that. I think that's kind of always been something that we've done in Lake Bluff, and that's a great tradition to continue, is that that we really think and discuss quite a bit about how we would increase that fee. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Markey. All right, at this point in time, if I don't hear any other questions or comments, I'd like to have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. For the first reading. So we'll see this again April 10th. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is item 16, which
A related item?
a related item, a resolution approving a professional engineering services agreement with Christopher B. Burke Engineering. As discussed at the March 1st, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting, the village requested a proposal from Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited, CBBEL, to provide professional services to assist the village in the implementation of a stormwater utility. Specific tasks that the village has requested assistance with include confirming the average amount of impervious surface in sample properties in each residential zoning district, measuring the actual impervious surface of properties with all non-residential zoning districts, and the production of a stormwater utility credit and incentive manual. The proposed scope also includes attending additional meetings as needed for a total fee not to exceed $33,060. Staff conversations with Christopher Burke indicate this work can be completed by the effective date of the stormwater utility ordinance, which is July 1st, 2023. So there's a copy of the resolution attached and the proposed agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Markey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from trustee Hatch. Any comments regarding this resolution for the professional engineering services agreement?
Will we see the credit and incentive manual before it's finalized? Will that come?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we have a roll call vote.
Trustee Hatch.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Inkeman.
Aye. Next on the agenda is the trustees' report. Do any trustees have a report to share with the board this evening?
I don't have a report, and I don't want to take a ton of the board's time. I was hoping to just have a 2-minute update from you, Drew, on Stonebridge, because there has been some stuff starting, and I was hoping we could just
Sure.
maybe touch on where we're at right now.
So, demo permit was issued probably about a week and a half ago. They started demolition, I'll say true demolition in earnest, Wednesday of last week. They were trying to harvest some additional, I'll call them salvageable pieces, architectural elements, including the copper a shed dormer and a roof top feature, and
They meaning not the
The-
village.
correct, the
But-
owner and the owner's contractor had pulled those off, and then they started, all this is after the removal of all asbestos done in accordance with laws and regulations, EPA, all that was done before they started demolition, that's the requirement. But so they started that demo, and they started on, let me think about this. They really have been focused on the manor, the south side of the manor, and then I think later this week, they're gonna move over to the gatehouse where they've hung I'll call it a curtain to protect material from flying because it's proximity to adjoining properties on the north side. So it's a large tarp, I guess like 30 feet in the air. So they're gonna wait, and I think this is what Mike Croak told me this morning, is that they are anticipating a rain or heavy rainfall, and they're gonna take advantage of that in terms of controlling the dust.
Sure.
And focus on taking down the tower then to really help manage the dust. We have given the contractor a warning about not using water to control some dust. Now, it's what we observed, it wasn't a critical, I mean, it was blowing due west, towards the forest preserve when we observed it, and it was mostly what I saw was a plume of smoke from the excavator, but, wind comes and goes. There was a neighbor had launched a concern about it, but we went out there and followed up, and staff is out there multiple times a day, and I see that continuing. The contractor has told us that he thinks he'll be done with everything within 30 days. And they were hauling today off-site the work they had knocked from what they pulled down last week. But they'll keep, I think the technique or style that they're doing this in is they're kind of knocking things down in a manner so that it collapses inward. So to control dust, but also to make things not fall away from the site, and really that's their main focus. Interesting enough, this is the same firm, the construction firm that installed all the infrastructure in the original just rents, put in the stormwater utilities and the water, so they're familiar with the property. So yeah, that's the overall status.
Thank you.
I will add this, interesting enough, like that copper roof, the contractor asked if the village wants that.
Oh.
Now, we don't have the room in our current, we purchased a container with, and it's pretty much full.
Yeah.
But they did also pluck off some I'll call them other reliefs that were on the gatehouse that the owner didn't offer. And I'm not even sure the owner knows that the contractors offered these things, but we think these smaller pieces and some marble that they've offered, we're gonna take.
Yes.
But the roof, I mean, they're massive. I mean, it's as big as this.
Is there anything we could do about
Well,
that?
I think if they'll take it
Because
for scrap.
there's a value to
There's a
it.
copper, right, yes,
Right.
but I think they're asking if, do we want to salvage it for the villages, these other smaller pieces, which are usually easily managed, easily relative term, but this is something, I don't know where we would store it, one, two, how would we pick it off of a machine, even if we don't, not set up for that, but.
It's not our job, generally speaking.
But the idea of, I mean, the village, at least my understanding, when we captured all these other items and retrieved them, they were smaller artifacts that could be stored or repurposed as part of other public improvements down the road. And something of this scale it's hard to imagine if and when I would put that on the same scale as the village being asked by IDOT to reuse the bridge on Green Bay Road. It's like, it's a nice idea, but I don't know what we do with it. I mean, I think there's probably greater value in it being recycled. I don't know how it can be repurposed with ease or any foreseeable time frame. I mean, Mike Croak came down to my office today and showed me a picture of it and said, please tell me we won't say yes to this. I don't know, so.
Thank you for that, Drew.
More than you wanted probably, but that's the
No,
answer.
that's what I wanted. I wanted to
Yeah.
hear it all, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? So that concludes the trustees' report. Do we have any item for discussion at executive session this evening?
We do.
We do. What are
Collective
they?
bargaining.
Collective bargaining. So, would I entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss collective bargaining?
And then upon the adjournment of closed session, the public session will automatically adjourn without additional public business.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, trustee Fisher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Ryder.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Hatch.
Yes.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher. Trustee Yankovic.
Usually me doing that.
I thought you said yes.
I did.
She thought you were asking her a question.